Hi, my name is Nzinga Duga. Currently, I'm the executive director for the Emoja Community Education Foundation, also hold a nonprofit that is around African American girls.
My name is Bryan Brown. My pronouns are he and him. The most important titles in my household are, Christian, father, husband. I'm also college professor of science education at Stanford University. So those are the titles that kind of frame what I do. I'm approaching year number 18 as a professor at Stanford University.
My name is Keenan Norris. He, his. I'm a professor. I'm a writer, community member. As a professor, this is my 16th year in higher education. I teach at San Jose State, teach American literature and creative writing there. So I'm an assistant professor, American literature and creative writing.
Jason Seals, he, him, his. In terms of identity, I think being a person of African ancestry is important to me. I think being a father is extremely important to me. Role in my community as they call me a yelder, in terms of being a younger person that has an influence. And so I definitely appreciate and am very humbled by that identity as well. I'm the chair of African American Studies and also an instructor.
My name is Dr. Megan O'Reilly. I use she, her pronouns. I identify as a Black Caribbean American, cisgendered female who grew up with enough. That's how I describe social class. And I also identify as an able-bodied, a petite woman as well.
My name is Grace Carroll. I go by the pronouns of she and her, and I am currently retired from the academy and doing work with African American students. In terms of salient identity, right now it's mainly grandma. I have 11 grandchildren, and I have, in retirement, created a series of books to support literacy through a LLC called Wordsmith Jr. and a companion nonprofit to help support literacy with groups called the Curious Book Club.
My journey really at San Francisco State is the one that really seeded me in education because I had such amazing Black faculty and staff mentors. I cannot tell you how much they were a part of our lives and staff organization in that Black Studies department.
Once I got to college, being amongst African instructors, professors, historians, scholars that really saw my greatness, tapped into my greatness, invested in me. My journey was me being awakened, so to speak, as a college student. And I think that began to inspire me in different ways that really kind of encouraged me and motivated me to want to give that experience to other people.
I earned my undergraduate degree in biological sciences from Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. So one of the things about being at a Black college that is unique was that we had a collective identity. And so it was the first time I had a shared identity with the institution. And so that institution really poured into us by saying, here's our expectation as Black people, here's our obligation to the communities we serve. And so for me, it was a celebration of culture that I really loved, had a great time, learned a lot, and really prepared me with the confidence that I needed to go out and do more after I graduated.
89, the students asked me to come to they were having some sort of retreat. Once there, they sort of came into my room and said, well, we're going to demand that they create an office of African American students, and we want you to take the job. Over a period of that year, they had the protest, they got the job, and that's when I started sort of full-time in higher education. I had a joint academic administrative appointment as the director of African American student development and then working in African American studies.
Black educator blessings.
Being Black, being a person of African ancestry, being African American, however one might define him, her, or they self, I just want to make it clear that being who we are isn't a burden. I think about the legacy that I have to carry on from the Dr. Carter G. Woodsons, the Mary McLeod Bethunes, the W.E.B. Du Bois, their scholarship, their writings, the ways in which they use pedagogy, the ways they use activism. To me, it's an honor to be a Black educator.
When I work with my Black students, I just get to really lean into that. It's not so much what I know, but it's also who I am that is healing. And that's really important to me.
Many Black men, young Black men, have gravitated toward me as an educator. It's been really rewarding.
As an African American educator, you become so symbolic. And so for Black folks, Black men in particular, one of the real blessings of that role is that you got a chance to really speak to people about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a man of color. And I really enjoyed that because it was such a unique opportunity to pour into our young people.
Having more Black faculty does enormous things for students. They see role models, they see people they can talk to. It's been a wonderful, wonderful journey for me. There's so many blessings. The primary blessing is just having fabulous students. Just being able to feel you were able to touch lives and make a positive impact on students. Just to see these students thrive has been the greatest blessing of being in education.
Paying the Black tax.
It is a blessing to be able to, have students that specifically gravitate toward you, right? Because they identify with you, identify with your person and with your experience. That also is like some extra work that is on the table that a lot of my colleagues are not faced with. A Black tax in terms of starting from a point of structural and historical disadvantage when you might be one of only, 1, 2, 3 Black faculty, in a department with 100 people, 100 faculty, that's problematic. So yeah, there's a lot of Black taxes. I've been teaching since 2005. And before that, I was a Black student. Already been through a lot of stuff and had, some feelings about things that I'd already experienced. When I arrived at San Jose State, I didn't arrive without baggage. I arrived with my experience. So I didn't come to this job at San Jose State, free of any of that. I came with all of that.
The other aspect of being a Black educator is that you end up taking on an enormous burden of leading an entire community. And so your job is not just your kids, your students, but it becomes, whether or not you take it on or not, to become a community leader. I might be bothered that I'm now taking on more responsibility, right? I might be bothered that my job includes counseling and supporting and mentoring many more students than I would take on if we had more than 2 faculty of color here, right? But because it's part of our mission, is to educate the next generation, I'll happily take that on. It is kind of an additional tax. It's what we call the Black tax. It's being Black in America. You're gonna have an additional responsibility.
Because as a Black faculty, you're not only called upon to do the things that white faculty do, your research, your teaching schedule, meetings, etc. As a Black faculty, other Black students are going to seek you out because they like to have someone they can talk to about being Black in that environment, about issues of racism that they might be experiencing in some of their classrooms. They want you to be an advocate. These are roles that white faculty don't have to carry with them. What Black faculty are called upon to do every day as part of their job that is not in their job description. Being a Black person who's concerned about our children and our families, we're all faced with this whole notion that, the problems are so large. They have such a long history of being problems that you're always navigating and figuring you're not doing enough.
You got to be twice as good to get ahead, right? That's the Black tax. Additional cost because of being a part of the Black community.
Racial battle fatigue.
In the definition of racial battle fatigue, what I identify with most is the psychological toll, like some of the unsung ways that I feel like I have to maneuver or suppress or code switch or show up. So a lot of representational burden, a lot of emotional labor, and a lot of, feeling like I'm always on.
The battle fatigue is 12, 14-hour work days. That means weekends, because nobody's going to protect your students like you will. You don't get to be human and just say, you know what, I want to chill. I want to take the afternoon off. And it's direct and it's subtle and it is overwhelming. Then comes all the anti towards you. You get that, and you have to have really a strong constitution to be able to actually deal with what's going to come at you. There's so many micro and macro aggressions. You have to learn to place that in a space of where it belongs, but it also impacts you. Dis-ease within the body, depression. Oftentimes we're walking depression. It shows up in anger that gets situated in our body. It can impact the way we raise our children. Quality of life. Your life is shortened.
When I think about battle fatigue, survival thrust becomes really important for African people. And the survival thrust of African people is grounded in our culture. Survival thrust really focuses on, one's propensity, one's willingness, one's desire to nurture, take care of themselves. And if you're thinking about survival thrust as it relates to African people, you can't take care of yourself without taking care of your family. You can't take care of yourself and your family without taking care of your community. There's an interconnectedness.
I think that students experience racial battle fatigue differently. I think prior to about 2015, we had a generation of Black students who did, by and large, feel that things had changed for Black people. A lot of that had to do with Barack Obama, becoming president and the ways that they saw, America opening up.
Anti-Blackness.
Well, I think anti-Blackness is so normalized that I think for a lot of people it is hard to identify. Anti-Blackness creates the anti-self, where people have a hostile relationship towards people that look like them and even within their own self. I think you see an anti-Blackness play out within students. Students coming into these spaces not knowing their value.
Anti-Blackness being global, right? It doesn't just come from white people. Given our student bodies, oftentimes it doesn't primarily come from white people.
Anti-Blackness shows up as a constant. It's almost like having a cold every day. It's like having a virus every day. But that virus at some point begins to infect the body.
Racial reckoning.
Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, it kind of impacted me personally, is it made me look backwards. I'm thinking about, this is the same thing that happened with Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo. So the same thing was happening in the 90s, and in the 90s I'm responding to it. But I have to recognize, for a lot of young people, they grew up in a Barack Obama era. So their perspective on racial issues is much different than mine. So I need to figure out, as an elder, how do I empathize with these young students who are coming to a realization that maybe America might be racist.
It's extremely painful as a human. And I think I say that intentionally because racism, as it relates to African people, negates our humanity.
I found myself obsessed with watching everything that was happening with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and I kept telling myself I was going to turn it off, but I couldn't, because I wanted to watch the whole thing all the way through the court trial. I was obsessed for a minute around Breonna Taylor because of the treatment of that situation. That was so incredibly egregious, how that went down, and the treatment of her boyfriend. And so I know I took that all into my body. I didn't break at first because the anger was so strong. And then at some point, I just cried and cried and cried and cried. It seemed like for a long time.
Although I knew it happened, seeing it on, widescreen just brings up those feelings.
I started to kind of move through the world differently, more questions about safety, more where are we going and why. Stopped running after Ahmaud, just stopped for multiple reasons. 1, mourning. 2, not feeling safe. 3, also feeling too privileged to run. He can't run anymore.
Each morning when I would go run these warehouses, I started out by stretching in front of this office. And of course, during the early months of COVID, all the offices were, abandoned. I could look into the office, and see people's paperweights and their papers and everything just sitting on their desks, the way they left them, how we all just left our stuff one day. As I looked into those offices, I started to see myself in the reflection and started to think about Ahmaud Arbery day after day after day. And once in a while, a police car would pass by. I just started to think, man, this is the wrong place to be. That could be me. And I started to see Ahmaud Arbery in the mirror. Plays on my sense of safety. Just in terms of mental health in general, 2020 wasn't good.
Stress and vicarious trauma.
One of my mentors, Dr. Grace Carroll, wrote a book, and it's called Mundane Environmental Extreme Stress. And so the basic premise is that because we have a love for Black people, when we see someone getting pulled out of their car, it's as if our cousin or our brother or our sister has been discriminated against. And so we have this stress that emerges from knowing other people are experiencing oppression and are being discriminated against.
We coined the concept of mundane, extreme environmental stress. And mundane because it happens every day, but it's environmentally induced, Mundane, extreme, it's environmental, but bottom line, it's stressful. It's stressful to Black people. And not only to Black people, it's stressful for those who identify with Black people. I feel as African Americans, we're in a somewhat extreme environment. The mere fact that we've had all the protests about just police killing of innocent young Black boys and girls, I don't see anyone who could possibly say we live in the same social, political environment, or the impact of those environments are the same for us as African Americans. I really wanted to pursue this notion of Mies because I felt at least naming it and having a word for it and understanding it would allow us to navigate it better.
Now, someone gets shot, they'll send you video of that person getting shot. It's digital trauma being spread to people all across the country, right? So lots of kids are feeling this digital trauma, and they're not knowing what to do with it because it's not supposed to be magnified this way. And so there's a new era of people experiencing this extreme stress because they're seeing just how prevalent discrimination is across the country. I can't have peace if my brother is getting hurt. I can't have peace if my sister is being shot. And so it produces stress.
So I feel like the vicarious trauma, just as a Black woman myself, and then each hour going through it with my clients, it was a lot. Everyone that was Black was showing up with the symptoms. So everything from the physiological, headaches, forgetfulness, lack of focus, body pains, to the emotional, the hypervigilance, the anxiety, the deep depression, the hopelessness. I had some people on the brink of, why am I here? When your life, the message of your life not mattering is so chronic, in your face, you start to ask, different existential questions. Vicarious trauma is an experience of trauma that occurs to a person whether or not they were the direct recipient of that trauma. Vicarious actually has a lot of different mediums. You could hear about it just auditorily, you could view it, or you could know about it happening to somebody else that shares some type of salient either identity, group membership, or closeness to you, right? So vicarious trauma has all the same symptoms of I guess what we would call direct trauma without the experience of it. So the same fear for your life, the hypervigilance, the physiological arousal, all the same symptoms happened even if you did not directly experience the trauma. What we're seeing in the loss of these Black lives is murder, right? It's graphic content. And so that is sending us into a physiological response and a mourning response simultaneously that is causing a lot of cortisol to course through our body, a lot of other physiological reactions, and then the psychological toll beyond viewing that clip can last months afterwards. The situation around the events, the event itself, the unfeathered video is trauma, plain and simple. Black people everywhere have their heckles and the hair on the back of their neck stand up and go into a mini fight or flight even when a police car drives by them, because that's the mere presence of those red and blue lights is detrimental to their survival. I don't know if we can unsee what we saw. It's logged in somewhere deep in our amygdala parts of our brain because it's that autonomic responding of safety versus danger. But there are things we can do, not to unsee it, but to respond to what we've seen and kind of come back or down-regulate or neutralize the arousal that we get sent into. Self-care, engaging in hobbies, and my favorite, Black joy as resistance. Creating joy, seeking out joy, and sharing that joy with others, because that creates a counter ripple, a virtuous ripple. Your wellness begets the wellness of others. And so really seeking out the things that replenish you, the things that build you up, and doing that in community.
Institutional response.
The president of our university put out statements that were, definitely in favor of Black Lives Matter and against anti-Blackness. All the appropriate shows of support and solidarity were given, across the college by the, various people in power. At the same time, it catches you kind of strange. Thankful for the support, but what is it based in? Wondering, if it takes a Black man being lynched in the street in 2020, with dozens of people watching and, begging the police to stop on videotape, that's what it takes to believe Black people about, police brutality, after all these years and everything. I don't know, I'm looking, I'm kind of looking sideways at some of the people who are newly arrived at these revelations. It's important to, for us to really think hard about whether the university is putting on a particular event, panel discussion or whatever, in order to change something or in order to say they did it.
I do remember a couple statements from the president's office. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Sorry this happened. We're here for you, right? And that's how they respond. Now McDonald's and Pepsi and Hertz Rental Car is going to say we stand against racial oppression. So the question is, before that, what were you for? And if this statement is an indication that you have a changed perspective, then I'm really questioning, what was your position before, and why have you done nothing about it?
I don't think the institution that I work at and other institutions of my colleagues truly address the matter. I didn't see there being a real effort to really address these issues. We expect those folks in those positions to have the answers. I think they're at a loss, but we're not asking them to have the answers. We're asking them to collaborate with us. We're asking for there to be a different environment, and they don't have to have the answers. They just have to have the willingness to make that change.
Solutions for equity and inclusion.
Black students, Black faculty, Black counselors. There needs to be more of them. I think it's very important for these institutions to understand more clearly the impact of race, racism, and the stress accompanying it.
Yes, the institution responded by doing a couple of things. Making statements. Our institution did something I think most didn't do, and they decided we're going to hire faculty to study race, and we're going to hire them in a particular subject area. So we have what's called a STEM cluster hire. When we start to see institutions with presidents and provosts and deans who look like folks of color, and there's real diversity across the context of race and gender, I think that's when the institution is really doing something. And then when things happen, which you know they will, I need cultural safe spaces. Students need spaces where they can come, get connected, have support, and be able to talk to people who look like them, who are from their communities. So they have people who understand the things that they're going through.
There really should be specific funding for basically Black initiatives.
Faculty don't get credit for mentoring Black students, and they do a lot of mentoring. So how can that be a part of the tenure package? So how can we change the tenure process to include the work of mentoring and supporting students? The awarding process for faculty members it's really under the constraints of a white cultural framework. And so how we reward each other is it's about research, but it's also about service. It is also about service. And so what does that look like in a faculty position? So when it comes to Black staff, that's a little bit harder because there's no protection like tenure. We've got to have a better way in which the system can support Black staff and allow for them to have similar opportunities that faculty have. We said we have to deconstruct the system.
For faculty, I think people need to be cognizant of the kinds of extra things faculty members have to do beyond their job description. Discussions about how not parallel their job is compared to their white counterpart should be had at some level. And the kind of work that they do should be acknowledged as work that is equally important than the work that the institution designates as important. For professors, understanding that they have more than one job at an institution, the job description job, and then what they have to do as a Black professor to support their students.
We should treat Black students, Black staff, Black faculty as if they were gold. Now this is California, right? Gold rush. What do we do with gold, right? Once we mine it or we find it, we behold it as precious. We might create a process to refine it and have it be its best version of itself, right? We might chisel off the dirt. We might bathe it in some chemical bath. We might, polish it, right? And you would want to have every point of contact that enacts with the gold to know about it, know its properties, know where it comes from, also value it, and do its best to make it shine from within. It's already brought the shine, it's gold, right? But you want to remove any barriers that would dim that shine, right? And that's what institutions need to do. And then every point of contact, be it professors, be it people in student affairs, be it administrators, TAs, every point of contact knows that and is expecting the student to be here, is valuing their contribution, and isn't going to do anything that hinders or diminishes the gold, right? The students.
We center the invaluable experience and insight that Black scholar practitioners possess to advance equity, inclusion, and systemic change. These are the Black voices from the Ivory Tower.